In this video, I'm going to talk about measures of central tendency. Measures of central tendency are the mean, median, and mode. Chances are you've heard about these concepts in other courses, in your undergraduate. You probably use these concepts in your practice. Measures of central tendency are ways to describe our data. For example, if we read an article in JABA, it's likely that the authors are going to report the mean scores across phases for participants. Measures of central tendency are also used to compute various statistics that we might use in group research design. So, for example, if you've already watched the video that goes over variance and standard deviations, you might have noticed that the mean is needed in order to calculate variance. A frequency distribution or a histogram is a plot, is a graph that plots the values of observations along the horizontal axis, and there's a bar showing how many times each score occurred. These frequency distributions or histograms are really useful for assessing the properties of the distribution of scores. And I'll give you some examples of various distributions that you might come across in histograms in another video. So let's talk about each measure of central tendency. First, the mode is the score that occurs most frequently in a data set. If you're looking at a histogram, it's easy to pick out the mode because it's the tallest bar that you're going to see. Some data sets can be bimodal. This means that there are two scores that occur the most often. There are two modes. Distributions can also have more than two modes, and these are called multimodal distributions. The median is another measure of central tendency. This is the middle score when scores are ranked in order of magnitude. So it's different to find the median or calculate the median depending upon whether or not you have an odd number of scores or an even number of scores in your distribution. And it's a little bit easier to calculate if you have an odd number of scores. So when you have an odd number of scores, to find the median, first you're going to organize all of your data in ascending order. So from smallest to biggest. And then you're going to add 1 to the total number of scores. So say that we have 13 scores in our distribution, you would add 1 and you would wind up with 14. The next step in calculating the median would be to divide by 2. So 14 divided by 2 is obviously 7. This tells you that the 7th score in the distribution is the median. Now, it's a little trickier when you have an even score, right? So say that you have 12 scores and you add 1 to that. When you divide by 2, you would wind up with 6.5. This would mean that the median is at position 6.5, which is impossible. The median can't be between two numbers. So instead, what you would do is you would take the two numbers that fall on either side of 6.5 and you would add them together and divide by 2, and this becomes your median. So there's a little bit more math involved when you have an even number of observations in your data set. The mean is the measure of central tendency that you're most likely to come across, and essentially the mean is the average. So to calculate the mean, you simply add up all of the scores in your distribution, and then you divide that by the total number of scores. The problem with the mean is that it can be heavily influenced by outliers. So say that most of my scores are between 7 and 12, but then someone scored a 33. This would highly influence the mean. Although there are some limitations with using the mean, it's commonly used and one of the most commonly reported measures of central tendency because it takes into consideration every single score in the data set as opposed to the median and the mode. I understand that it might be hard to make sense of these concepts without seeing them. So I've also included a study sheet in this section that you can check out that might help you to better understand these concepts. Of course, if you're still confused in calculating the mean, median, or mode, or you have questions about how these are used in our research, please ask your instructor. They're more than happy to help. Thank you.